Hello everybody, this is Renaissance Craft, and today we're going to be going over the basics of one-point perspective. Simply put, it is one point wherever you want on the page. A lot of times it's in the middle or somewhere around the middle and to the side, so you can get more on the page. But it can literally be anywhere you want it to be to create the perspective. The idea is that everything converges to this one point, as if you're looking in a long, bright tunnel. As it goes further back, it starts to come into one point until you can only see a dot or hardly anything at all. And that is kind of the overall idea of one point perspective. Every line except the horizontal lines or lines not making up, going back into the distance. So mainly it's the horizontal lines. There can be other variables, but to do a true basic one-point perspective, you have straight horizontal lines and you have the other lines going back, creating the depth of the perspective. Now, you can do letters, as you see here. This is basically, I made a very strange looking K so you can see how, I put the dot over here, brought this out, and now all of a sudden you have a K that's made with a line here, a line here. You want to see, kind of everything goes back to that. And only the horizontal lines and a couple other random lines that I created to show don't really have anything to do with that point. But mainly it's the horizontal and then everything else to create the depth. As you can see how long it is, I cut it off with the horizontal here. You can see every point a line would be going back. If it was transparent, you would be able to see those, but I just gave tick marks to show where they would actually be. That line's going back. And you can create very complex or very simplistic lettering, designs, numbers, whatever you want with this. This was very popular probably in the 70s with lettering to make it pop, or when movies first started, you kind of had that pop and that little two-point or one-point perspective creating that. It's a very simplistic way of doing things, but it's a good way to start to learn instead of just creating boxes or shapes. It's a great way of learning the actual one-point perspective. Then you have a more or less just tunnel, as I was talking about before, how everything feels like it's converging back to that one point as the tracks or whatever come out. So you have, a little bit of bracing. You can see, I did a little bit of shading to give a little bit of difference, nothing fancy. But once again, all these lines are created, top and bottom, to go back to that one point, and only the horizontal lines. And then I did just a couple other lines to show you that, they are creating, a difference between the horizontal and the lines going back to the one point. Now, if you look here with a little note, if, this is technically one point perspective, and if you really struggle your mind to look at it like this, or like this, you can actually see it, but as you can see from here, it doesn't look right. It feels flat. It feels wrong. And one of the main reasons, unlike with this line here or these lines here, the reason it doesn't feel like it's going into depth is you got too much going on. Nothing is exact. You're not framing it or creating anything to make it feel like it's popping out. All your lines are crooked or wrong and not matching up. So you're basically trying to figure out these two lines and these two lines and this line to this line, compared to saying, okay, this is creating depth and these lines are adding to that. So it just makes it look flat. It makes it look like there is no perspective here. So that is the basic 1-point perspective idea. So we'll actually put this over here. And once again, all you're going to do is take 1 point anywhere on the page, right? And then all lines go from there. So you're going to have a line here, a line here, a line here, and all lines, as you can see, go from here, unless you're doing the vertical or the vertical lines, and then they're going there. But as you can see, if I do it the other way as well, this starts to feel like, even though there's nothing there, that it has depth. You know, so all of a sudden it feels like there's depth to this, even though it's just a few lines. It starts to feel like it's coming out. And then, you know, you can add other lines. You can add, you know, something else in here. You know, create a little box. Oops. And, you know, maybe you have something else that's going on. So I don't know what this would be, but you know, now you have this sense of, for whatever reason, there's something right here, a weird little box shape, but now you have the idea of depth. You have something within that depth that is creating, you know, a shape within that. You know, you can do that over here as well, where, you know, maybe this is, you know, coming, and all of a sudden you have another box. And I mean, this can be, you know, a lot more in depth. This is just showing you the very basics of what you can do or can bring to the actual design that you're creating, or, you know, space or anything at all that you're creating. All you're doing is bringing, you know, all the lines that push the depth of the actual image back into 1 point. And the other lines, the horizontal and vertical lines, are creating the shapes itself. So the depth is created by the 1 point, and the rest is making the objects themselves. So, and I mean, you can do, you know, rounded. Not everything has to be, you know, perfectly square or, you know, up and down. You know, so it's just what you want. But, you know, sometimes it's harder to create the feel when it's rounded, or you know, has like weird angles to it. It's sometimes harder to create that feel that it belongs in that space. It's not impossible, and it's not that you can't do it. It's just sometimes it's, especially when you're first starting out, it's a little more difficult to get it to work. But this is just a very basic introduction to 1 point perspective. Next video we will be discussing 2 point perspective and the differences between 1 point and 2 point. I am Renaissance Craft. Thank you again.